I promise you, Hawkeye is on this t-shirt. He's just too low down. Hold on, one sec. He's there. He's there. I look like I'm doing a provocative pose now. I'm not. I'm just showing you Hawkeye on my t-shirt. Anyway, let's review the episode. Hi, I'm Phil. Welcome to my channel where I like to talk about all the geeky pop culture that I like and consume. Things like Doctor Who, Star Trek, and the MCU. And we are at the penultimate episode of Hawkeye. Next week's going to be the finale. Wow, what a ride we've had. I've thoroughly enjoyed this show so far, and this episode is no exception. I predicted last week that this would be a heavily Yelena-centric episode, given that she was introduced at the end of last week. And it kind of was, but also kind of wasn't. There was a lot of focus at the beginning and at the end of her, or maybe a little bit in the middle more than the end, but she didn't actually appear in it as much as I expected her to. I kind of expected her to have another meeting with Clint at some point. Maybe towards the end of the episode they would fight again. That didn't happen, and it surprised me. But what we did get was the very beginning. Oh, by the way, there will be spoilers, so if you haven't seen the episode, go away, watch it on Disney+, come back and see me then. The pre-title scene was a scene that could have been something from Black Widow itself. I mean, it could have easily been the post-credit scene for Black Widow, but here we get it here, and it kind of feels like it's even continuing on bits of the plot from Black Widow, where Yelena is hunting down other Black Widows and using that red stuff on them to try and deprogram them from their mind control that they are under. So we start the scene, she goes in, attacks a former agent, puts the red stuff on her, and all of the other person can do is complain about the mess they made of the carpet because she wasn't actually mind controlled anyway. Yelena then goes into the bathroom and gets blipped, snapped, whatever we're calling it these days, and reappears 5 years later. Thankfully, it's still the same woman that owns the house, but now she's got a husband and a kid. So, yeah, all very, very interesting stuff. I didn't clock this at the time, but she mentions that the daughter is adopted, and I've just realised that's because all of the Black Widows, as part of the programme, are sterilised, aren't they? That didn't occur to me at the time, but it's nice that they recognise that that's a factor in there, and recognising what they've established in the MCU continuity so far regarding that. Before she gets blipped away, she does also mention Natasha. You know, somebody asks how Natasha's doing to her. She says she's doing fine and stuff. So this is a scene set in 2018. And as soon as we saw that, much like when we saw 2012, right at the beginning of the series, you kind of, if you know the key dates of things that happen in the MCU, 2018, I kind of figured the blip was coming. Wasn't sure if she would get blipped or the people around her would get blipped. But yeah, so she gets blipped, comes back, and obviously learns that her sister has died. In fact, at this point, we end with her saying she needs to find her sister. We as the audience know that she's not going to, because she's already gone. I really loved this opening scene, and again, I thought it was setting us up for a very, Yelena-centric episode where she would be in it for the majority of the scenes in the episode in one way or another, either fighting with Clint, maybe. We do get a nice scene of her with Kate later on, which I'll talk about, but I kind of just wanted more of her. She's really funny as well, and she maintains that humour in this episode, so it was really I'm hoping we get some more of her next week. A lot more of her next week. Where we start with Kate in this episode is she's reeling from being basically dismissed by Clint. He has said that it's not safe to be around him now. He's got a Black Widow assassin after him, and that she needs to go home and stay out of it. And it's kind of deflated her a little bit, and deflated her drive to be a superhero, which she had before, and she starts questioning herself. All very nice stuff. She has a lovely heart-to-heart with her mum. And she even confesses that her and Clint have been investigating Jack because they've discovered that he might be involved in some shady deals with a company that he's on the board of. And her mum has this look in her eye, and again, by the end of this episode, you'll have seen the episode, I presume, so you'll know, we finally get the reveal that her mum is indeed very shady. and there's this look on her face that's kind of like cogs ticking, like, what am I going to do here? Because my daughter's getting onto stuff. But actually, later on, Jack gets arrested. We find out that Kate's mum has called the police on him based apparently on the information that her daughter gave, and he's being arrested. Now Jack is being like the utmost gentleman about this. He's going peacefully. He's saying to his wife, his fiance, I'm sure this is a big misunderstanding. Little does he know that it's probably her that set him up. I am now fully on I think Jack's an alright guy, and he's being completely set up for this. As he said, he's not on the board of as far as he's concerned, he's not on the board of anything. He doesn't want to work a day of his life. He's just a rich, person who likes swords. So, I think now, even at that point, before we had the reveal later on about who her mum had met, I think we knew what was going on there. Apart from the opening, Yelana's big scene of the episode, though, was meeting up with Kate. She goes to Kate's apartment and surprises her there to try and get information on where Clint is. And, that was just a really good scene. They're both very funny characters, so seeing them play off against each other, with Kate, on the back foot because she's got this trained assassin in her house, and yes, Kate is good with a bow and arrow, but she's not up to Black Widow standards of fighting. And Yelana, if you've seen the Black Widow movie, Yelana was the best thing out that movie. She was so funny in it. Just the kind of dry humour, that dry Russian humour that she has, worked so well in that movie, and it works again here with her interacting, slightly intimidating Kate. Kate tries to get the bravado up, and you get a bit of back and forth banter between the two of them, and it is very funny to watch and very amusing. But then Yelana can quickly turn that from being humorous to being cold and bringing up the tension by talking about that she's there to kill Clint, and that she's been hired to kill Clint, and that as far as she's concerned, he's a killer, and he's the reason her sister's dead, and he deserves to die. It's a really interesting scene because it gets both of them challenging their own current perceptions of what the situation is. Because yes, Kate now knows that Clint was Ronin and he has killed a lot of people. But you can see the doubt coming into her mind slightly when Ilana starts questioning her, like, how long have you actually known him? Do you know just how many people he has killed? And even though she does eventually, Kate, come around to, no, he is a good man, we get that moment of doubt in the middle where she is clearly questioning it in her head and going, oh, does she have a point? And the acting in that scene, really good for portraying that. But she does come through on the other side. And equally, Yelana also gets challenged on what she's saying, about whether or not Clint's a good man, whether or not he should be classed as a hero. Kate pushes back on all that stuff about him, being a murderer and deserving to die. She pushes back on that and says he's a good man. He was your sister's friend. And you can see both sides of them have kind of, they're still on their respective paths, but there's a moment there where they have influenced each other slightly. We see another little nice interaction between Clint and his wife on the phone. Again, she is someone who is very supportive and clearly has some kind of connection to this world. I've seen theories on videos. There is a YouTuber called E equals MCU, or is it E equals MCU squared? Sorry if I've got that wrong. And he put out a theory that maybe his wife is Mockingbird, aka Bobby Morse, and that Laura's just a code name, or an undercover name, or a safe house name, something protective identity name. As a proponent of the MCU is everything that's ever been said it's been in the MCU theory, that means Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is MCU, Netflix stuff is MCU, all of that is MCU. I'm not keen on that because obviously Bobby Morse was in that already and not married in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and not married to Clint. So even if, I could handle a recast, but that would actually be changing the continuity. So that is something I'm hoping isn't true. but potentially she could be a previous holder of the identity of Mockingjay. And I think this theory comes also from the fact that in the comics, Clint has been married at one point to Bobby, but I believe he has also been married to Allura, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't read the Hawkeye comics, but I believe that's the case. So, you know, she is her own character, but maybe she has a past. Maybe she is an old agent. Maybe she did have the codename Mockingjay, or Mockingbird at one point, but then passed that on to Bobby. Who knows? I think in an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. episode, Bobby once did hint that she knew Clint. So, you know, she potentially knows him via his wife, who she got the codename from. That's my theory, and that's what I'm going with for the time being. But I do love how supported she is. She says she understands more than anyone ever could. So, yeah, I definitely think she has an involvement with that world of espionage in some way. During that conversation, Clint also says it's only a matter of time until the big man gets involved. At this point, I was already thinking, oh, that's definitely a reference to Kingpin. That's got to be. And that was indeed confirmed by the end of the episode when Yelena sends Kate a text message saying she'd found out who had hired her, and it was Kate's mother had hired Yelena to kill Clint. And there were photos of Kate meeting Kingpin, played by Vincent D'Onofrio, the actor who played him in the Daredevil series. Another notch for everything is connected, everything is MCU, all those Netflix shows, MCU, same actor. It's not watertight, we don't know for certain. It wouldn't be the first time an actor has carried over between different continuities. Just look at James Bond. Judi Dench's M was Pierce Brosnan's M, but in a completely different continuity of James Bond was also Daniel Craig's M, and they were definitely different continuities. So I'm not saying it's watertight and definite, but it certainly is a point towards the saying the Netflix side of the MCU is MCU. Feel free to argue with me in the comments. I'm happy to hear your side of the story. I will disagree, but I will like the engagement in the comment section. So yeah, overall, I thought this was a pretty good episode. I really liked that conversation, particularly between Yelena and Kate. That was really good. There wasn't as much action in this episode, but I don't think there necessarily needed to be. I think with the finale next week, we're probably going to get a lot of action. Kind of feels like they've got a lot to cram into next week. So you got the Kingpin stuff. How much is that going to play? I hope we get to see him in person. And he's not just, being in photos and seeing his feet setting up for future films or whatever. I hope we get to see at least one scene with him in person, because he's so good in that role. We've got the Yelena stuff to wrap up. Like I said, I hoped we would see more of her this week. I was kind of expecting her arc to play out with her going from wanting to kill Clint to maybe coming on side with him this episode, but that looks like it's playing into next episode. Then we've got obviously the Echo stuff. I didn't even mention Echo because Clint goes to find Echo in the Rowan costume, admits that he killed her dad, but points out that he was tipped off by her boss, aka Kingpin, and that must mean that her boss wanted her dad dead. So what's going to happen there? Are we going to have a convergence of everybody against the Kingpin, everybody against Kate's mum? What's going to happen with Jack? There's a lot of stuff to fit into next episode, but I'm really looking forward to seeing where it goes. I hope it sticks the landing. Loved the series so far. Less of the Christmas theme feel this week, I felt, but let's hope it brings back next week. We still haven't had that scene on the ice rink, I don't think, that we had in the trailer, so I think there's going to be some Christmassy themes next week. Really looking forward to it. Let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments down below. What was your favourite part? Are you on side with the Netflix stuff being part of the MCU now? Or are you still holding out saying, I don't think it is? Let me know in the comments below. And I'll see you next week for another review.